The topic for today's second didactic is psychological intervention for women facing violence, ensuring principles that enhance self-efficacy and removes victimhood. Let's understand what are the learning objectives of this didactic. So we'll understand what is a psychological intervention, relaxation techniques while providing psychological intervention. So we'll talk about relaxation technique in details, certain basic counseling skills, enhancing self-efficacy, and mental health reference. So let's first understand what psychological intervention is. Psychological interventions are performed to bring about changes in people, and it has consists of a wide range of intervention strategies that are directed towards various types of issues related to mental health. And each one of them addresses different types of issues. So it helps in understanding and treating the impact of violence experienced and how to manage the difficult emotional state or feelings. So what we were talking about in the previous didactic about the maladaptive thoughts or emotions or behavior. So the psychological intervention would be in addressing these maladaptive thoughts, emotions, and behavior, which has resulted from the trauma. These interventions, when effectively applied, result in improved self-esteem, self-mastery, self-control, and many other benefits in the life of a survivor. Now let's understand about certain basic counseling skills. Most important counseling skills are active listening. So eye contact is very important while we are doing the psychological intervention or basic counseling. Nodding, saying so that the person understands that I am listening intently to the person. Whenever needed, we'll also have to nod our head or say I understand or etc. Knowing when to use open and close-ended questions. Sometimes asking certain open-ended questions will make the individual in front of us able to vent out or share or express themselves better. Also, whatever we are listening, it's very important we summarize and paraphrase whatever we have listened. This will serve two purposes. One, we will be able to give a message to the person that we were listening to you. So the person knows that we are interested in the process. Also, another thing is, another purpose that it serves is that if we have missed anything from the narrative that the person has given us, we will be able to get that in the while we are summarizing or paraphrasing. Empathy, very important, where we have to be respectfully perceiving what the survivor is bringing from their frame of reference and communicate that back in a way that makes the client feel understood. That the client needs to understand, the woman needs to feel that we are believing the person, we are understanding, and we are there to help. Facilitating a ventilation of feelings. So that's why we need to ask open-ended questions. Validate her feelings. So we have to say statements like anyone in your situation would have felt the same way. And it's natural to feel angry. I understand. And it's terrible what has happened with you. So certain ways of talking to the person so that the person feels comforted, feels believed and understood. And providing reassurance, where we have to say that we are there to help her, and but we also have to remember that we are not going to give any false assurance. So saying things like, you look much better to me now than the first time we met. You have been experiencing this for a while now. It'll take some time for it to go away. Okay. To deal with guilt and shame is it's very difficult. So you can say it's not your fault. So certain reassuring, empathetic statements has to be made. Encouraging problem solving. Very important here to analyze the problem rationally and see the pattern in violence. Help her understand the problem in stepwise, break the problems into certain steps, and come up with alternatives after weighing the pros cons. Empower and enable resilience. So we need to restore confidence and self-esteem in that in the woman who have experienced violence, who as a result of which is experiencing a lot of trauma, as a result of which the person has a lot of guilt, shame, anger, fear towards oneself, and a lot of worthlessness or the negative view about self and world or future which we were discussing previously. So as a result of which, we need to empower the person, and that we can do by restoring confidence. So that could be a positive way of coping. Okay. And that can also be done by making them part of support groups. Discuss support system, which is very important because the resilience, strength, courage, confidence, all of it comes a lot from the support system. So connecting the person who have experienced violence and is experiencing trauma to their family members, relatives, neighbors, friends, workplace colleagues, or when needed with the legal support or medical, etc. So the proper referral and making them part of the support groups and connecting them to their closed ones. Handling crisis. So if you can understand, with the violence or abuse ongoing, there can be severe trauma and the person is experiencing crisis. So sharing emergency helpline numbers, important contact numbers, and preparing a safety plan. If the person is suicidal, then very important to prepare a safety plan for the person. Or otherwise, also, if there's a crisis situation, then to prepare a safety plan. Also, very important during counseling session is supervision of the counselor or health professional. The process of this counseling or helping a person who has been experiencing abuse or violence and is experiencing trauma can be very emotionally draining for the counselor. So the counselors needs to be aware of their own vulnerabilities and biases and ensure that it is not interfering with the counseling process. Now let's understand or summarize what are the do's in counseling. We need to listen very intently, actively. We have to maintain eye contact. We have to show interest through our verbal communication, through our body language. We have to be respectful towards the person. We have to accept the woman who have come to us, accept the client for whatever the person is saying. We have to be completely non-judgmental and accept the person. We have to be problem-oriented and not person-oriented. So how we were talking about how to do problem-solving strategies. Maintain confidentiality, extremely important. Read up the case before follow-up sessions and let the client set the pace. So we will take the session the way the client wants it. And what are the things that should not be done in counseling, the don'ts of counseling, making decisions on behalf of the client, being biased or judgmental, criticizing the client for leaving or not leaving the relationship, whichever is the abusive or the violent relationship, forcing clients to talk about things that she's not comfortable about. So maybe if the woman is talking about certain abusive relationship, let the client speak as much she wants to speak, not forced to speak beyond that. Acts of breach of trust or confidentiality, it's never to be done in the session of counseling. Not giving importance to the suicidal or self-harm statements by the client, because it has to be taken very important. Talk negatively or derogatory of the woman's spouse, okay? Even though the spouse is abusive or the violent or whatever, we will not make any derogatory comment about the person. Do not rush, do not force her to talk as if and make her, if she is reluctant, so force her to speak. So we'll have to take it in the space that the client wants to. Do not talk in an open place in front of others. We have to provide a safe space, privacy to the person. Only then the person will be able to feel comfortable and open up. Do not check your phone or allow anyone to enter the counseling room during the session. So you have to give the complete privacy and complete attention to the person, and do not say anything that will make her feel judged, because that will break the rapport that we have established with the client. Now we'll learn about the various techniques that constitutes psychological intervention. One of them is relaxation technique. So under relaxation technique, first we'll discuss about the diaphragmatic deep breathing. What do we do in diaphragmatic deep breathing? So we'll ask the woman or the client to close their eyes, to sit very comfortably and close their eyes. Inhale through the nose with long deep breath, very slowly, filling your stomach with air. Okay. So while you're inhaling, you will feel that the stomach is getting filled with air. Now exhale very slowly through the mouth till the air is fully released. While exhaling, you can tell yourself to relax in your mind. So mentally you can say relax. And we have to repeat this process of slow inhalation through nose, filling the stomach with air, and gradual exhalation through the mouth, and mentally saying relax repetitively, and gradually will be feeling relaxed and calm. So you can practice this with a woman who has experienced violence and has come to you. In your session, you can make the person do diaphragmatic deep breathing. Second is mindful breathing. What will we do in mindful breathing? We can make the person sit comfortably with eyes closed and the spine reasonably straight. Okay, now bring the attention of your client to her breathing. You tell the client that imagine that you have a balloon in your tummy. Every time you breathe in, the balloon inflates, and every time you breathe out, the balloon deflates. Now, notice the sensations in your abdomen as the balloon inflates and deflates. Your abdomen rising with the in breath, that is when you're inhaling, and falling with the out breath, that is when you're exhaling gradually. Thoughts will come into your mind because that's just how human mind does. So our mind is never free of thoughts, it will keep coming. But you simply notice those thoughts, then bring your attention back to the breathing, back to the balloon inflation and the deflation in your stomach, and let the thoughts come and pass the way it is, because that's the normal way how human mind works. But you focus on the breathing. That's the way of doing mindful breathing. This is also something that you can demonstrate and make your client do in the counseling session. This both diaphragmatic deep breathing and mindful breathing will help the client feel relaxed and calm. Another thing that we can do or demonstrate or use in the session is mood diary. If we can help the client, if the woman is experiencing a lot of negative emotions, is very worried, is very fearful, very anxious, is angry, then you can ask the person to maintain a mood diary. Okay, so as you can see, this is an example of a template of a mood diary where there are smileys with a sad smiley, then there's a neutral, and there's a happy smiley. Okay, so on a day-to-day basis, the person can rate their mood. So on a scale of 1 to 10, how happy the person felt, how sad the person felt, how many times it was okay, neither sad, neither too happy. At the same time, the person on Monday can note down what are the good things that happened today and what are the bad things that happened today. And similarly, maintain the log for every day. Because what happens is when the person is experiencing trauma or is going through a lot of stress, what happens is we tend to focus more on the bad things and not on the good things. So we tend to discount all the positive, all the good things happening and focus mainly on the bad things. As a result of which, we start having a lot of maladaptive thought process and negative emotions. So if we make the client consciously make note of the good things that happened or be grateful to the nice things that happened today, that will help the person acknowledge the good things besides the bad things. Next, we'll talk about the grounding exercise. It's very important for an individual who's experiencing trauma. So these are set of simple strategies that can help you help a person detach from the emotional pain that the person is experiencing. So what happens if a person has experienced trauma in form of some violence? Okay, so suppose the person has a woman has experienced rape. What happens is, even though the person has that has happened earlier and is nothing is happening right now and the person is safe, is at her home with her family and everything is fine, still the person may experience a lot of flashback and think that something again terrible is going to happen. So that emotional pain that gives a lot of rise to the anxiety or that anger that again that is going to happen. In that situation, grounding exercise will help to detach from that emotional pain and make the person rooted or grounded in the present time when the person is completely free of any harm and is safe. So there are several types of grounding exercise. We'll talk about the mental grounding exercise first. So in mental grounding exercise, you can ask the person to focus on 5 things that the person can see around. Okay, so if the woman is sitting in the room, so look around and find what are the 5 things that you can see. It can be a clock, it can be the fan, it can be the light, it can be a bag, it can be the cushion, it can be the curtain, anything around. 4 things that you can touch. Okay, it could be the bed sheet, it could be your cloth, it could be the hair, anything. 3 things that you can hear. You can try to focus on the 3 things in your environment right now, in the present moment, that you can hear. So it can be the sound of a vehicle, or it could be the sound of a clock, or it could be the sound of the fan moving. So what will happen is the person will be focusing on the current present environment that will help him or her detach from the past traumatic experience. Two things that you can smell around you, and one thing that you can taste. Okay. Similarly, can also be a physical grounding exercise. In physical grounding exercise, what we'll do, we'll ask the client to prepare a comfort bag. So in the comfort bag, you can ask the client, the woman, to keep things that are significant and important to the person, and also that something that helps the person in soothing. Okay. So for example, those things can be the person's favorite perfume, the person's comfort cloth. It could be a pillow. It could be something, if the person likes coffee beans, the smell of coffee beans, their favorite toy. It could be a family photograph, anything. But it can be connected to the five senses. So something to touch, something to see, something to smell, something to eat. So a combination of these things can be kept into a comfort bag. And when the person is experiencing flashback or all these negative emotions, the person can touch, feel, see, hear, taste these things and feel comforted and feel grounded at this present moment when the person is safe. Another way of grounding exercise is having a self-talk. So talking to oneself in a kind way, saying certain coping statements like, I can handle this. This feeling will pass. Right now, I'm safe. Whatever has happened in the past. Now, nothing is happening. Okay. So making certain self-talk, planning a safe treat for oneself. So maybe preparing the favorite meal, wearing the favorite outfit, going out to the favorite restaurant, reading your favorite book, watching a favorite movie, anything. It could also be painting, drawing, writing the journal, so that will give a way to vent out and express the pent up feelings. So these are the various grounding techniques that you can help your client with. Next, coming to the activity schedule. So a lot of times we see when the person has experienced violence or is experiencing trauma, the person starts experiencing a lot of fatigue and lack of interest or disinterest in activities, in daily activities or activities that would interest her earlier but has lost interest now. Okay. So in the previous didactic, you have heard about the depression, how the symptoms in depression, where the person has a marked disinterest for most of the activities. So as a result of which, there is decrease in the activity level in the person. So we can use activity schedule as a technique to structure one's days according to the activities that are avoided, and also give a good direction to the person. So there are two kinds of activities in an individual's life that we can include in the activity schedule. One is activities that will give them pleasure, and another is activities that gives mastery or is productive to the person. Okay, so there are certain activities which the person does very well and has a mastery, some amount of mastery in it, and will be very productive. And the other hand, some activities that are very pleasurable to the person. So we can have a balance of both these two types of activities and help the person. So pleasurable activities could be talking to friends over phone or going directly and meeting them, spending time with the pets, shopping, reading, etc. And mastery could be gardening. If the person is good in gardening and gives a productive way, gardening, going to work, okay, making it a point that you will go to work every day. Maybe if the person is interested in cooking, then cooking healthy meals for herself. That can be also a mastery activity. Artistic activities like painting and singing or solving a particular problem at hand. Next, we'll talk about sleep hygiene. So sleep, we know that during trauma, when the person is experiencing trauma, sleep is something that is largely affected, and the person's quality of sleep gets disturbed. So making sure that you get a good quality of sleep defines the overall quality of mental and physical health. So some of the ways of maintaining sleep hygiene would be, you can these are certain recommendations that you can suggest your client, and that will help the person maintain a good, healthy sleep. So you can ask the client or the woman to keep the room dark with a dim night light while sleeping. So the room should not be very illuminated. Avoiding tea or coffee or any energy drinks after 6 p.m. Avoiding the use of mobile phone or watching TV before sleeping, because we know that the blue light from these screens can also disturb the sleep. Maintaining regular time of going to sleep and waking up every day. So having a fixed time to go to bed. If it's 10 o'clock, every day at 10 o'clock, I'll go to sleep. If it's 8 o'clock, I wake up. Every day I have to wake up at 8 o'clock. So keeping a fixed time, not like one day I sleep at 9, one day I sleep at 12. Having light dinner and heavy breakfast, and having the dinner a little early, so that letting the body to digest and then going off to sleep. Physical exercise during the day. So there has to be a balance between exercise and activity and rest. Avoiding or reducing daytime sleep, because that will help to get a nice night's sleep. Avoiding any stimulating exercise or work before sleep. So not any very major big activity before sleep. And also another thing that we can do is using the room for sleeping or the bed for sleep only for sleeping, not using the bed for anything else. That could also be another way of maintaining a good sleep hygiene. So these are some of the psychological intervention strategies that you can help the woman who have experienced violence and is experiencing trauma and comes to you through your basic counseling sessions. Now let's talk about how to enhance self-efficacy. As we discussed that the person who have experienced abuse or has been experiencing abuse for over a period of time and is experiencing a lot of trauma starts having self-doubt, has a negative self-worth. So how do we bring about a positive self-efficacy? Mastery is one way. So the past success and failure impacts the sense of self. That can be highlighted. Vicarious learning. So success and failure of relatable figures impacts on self-efficacy. So maybe somebody from the friends group or the family, if those their success and failure can be highlighted, that will impact on the self-efficacy. Observational learning. So the role model, okay, can also be one of the way that will influence our core belief and the present state. So trying to help in the current physical and the mental health conditions will also help in developing the self-efficacy. So what are the 4 ways to enhance self-efficacy in our everyday life? Stay in the stretched zone. So make most use of their abilities. Okay, so whatever your abilities are, make the best use of it. Set simple goals, not a very unrealistic goals. So when we are planning maybe the activity schedule, so make it like 2 pleasurable activities and 2 mastery activities. So the goals should be reasonable and it should be broken down into sub goals so that it makes it achievable. Look at the bigger picture. So beyond the short-term losses, let's look at the bigger picture, that if I sustain or if I hold on to it this way, I can reach to this level. Okay, I will be a more resilient self. Reframe the obstacles. Okay, so whatever the problems or the hazards or the hurdles are, let's look at it in a different way. Let's reconstruct it or break it down into smaller challenges. And how to remove the victimhood. This is very important, because when a person has experienced violence, abuse and all, we always have a strong sense of victimhood. Okay, like I have been a victim of this. Let's remove that and let's make it to a survivor of that. So what is victimhood? It is an ongoing feeling that the self is a victim, which is generalized across many kinds of relationships. As a result, victimization becomes a central part of the individual's identity. So start believing that one's life is entirely under the control of forces outside oneself, such as fate, luck, or the mercy of other people. So one trauma starts defining that individual, and the entire identity becomes that I have been a victim of this. But there can be part beyond that as well. So the victims constantly talk about their past and their cause and effect rather than discussing the possible solutions. So we need to start constantly seeking recognition for one's victimhood. And how do we remove that victimhood? So the journey should be from the victimhood to growth. So as the socialization processes can instill a victimhood mindset, it can also instill a personal growth mindset. So how do we do that? We have to understand that traumas don't define us, and that doesn't form the core of our identity. It can be a part of our identity. We have been traumatized. We have experienced trauma, but that doesn't mean that is an entire self. It is just part of ourself. It is possible to grow from one's trauma. So that belief, that faith that, okay, it is possible to grow from one's trauma is very strong way to move or attain this journey from victimhood to growth. And we have to instill this hope in other similar situations while working towards this growth. A very important point here is trauma-informed care. So whenever we are addressing trauma for a woman who have experienced violence, sexual assault, rape, any kind of abuse, the trauma that we are addressing, we need to have a trauma-informed care environment. So what is trauma-informed care? It is a holistic approach evaluating the effects of trauma on survivors. We are not using the term victim. Taking steps to address the trauma and empowering the survivors to experience a sense of security and recovery. So we'll have to shift from what's wrong with you to what happened to you. There's nothing wrong with you. Something has happened to you. Okay, so there are 4 R's of trauma-informed care. First R is realize. So we have to realize that trauma affects all aspects of person's life. So we need to focus on the emotional health of the person, the physical health of the person, the cognitive health of the person, the professional health of the person. So every aspect of the person's life, it gets affected by trauma. So we have to address each of it. We have to recognize the symptoms. What are the trauma symptoms? We have to respond to this, but in an organizational level that promotes healing, okay? And also at an individual level. So we have to see the problem not individually only, but also as a holistically. And also we have to resist the re-traumatization so that the person doesn't experience secondary traumatization or keeps repetitively experiencing the flashbacks. So the environment should be trauma informed, where the person doesn't feel like a victim, but as a survivor, and the journey is from the victimhood to the growth. Now let's talk lastly about the referrals for mental health care. So the counselor should be able to develop a network with the other professionals. So be it the suicide helplines, be it the psychiatrist, be it the clinical psychologist, psychiatric social workers, there should be a proper network, as I was talking about in the trauma-informed care, that we have to address the problems in a holistic organizational way. We have to accompany the women and their families or make an introductory call for the referral. So we can't just make a referral to the person of the woman to a person. We need to make an introductory call, or maybe we can write a referral letter so that the person, the woman, again, when she goes to the new person whom I have referred to, doesn't experience the same trauma in narration. Okay. Referrals can be made to the women's organization, to various support groups, legal professionals, mental health professionals, and as and when whatever is required, accordingly the referral should be made, but referral needs to be made and the problem has to be dealt in a holistic way. Thank you.